Confidence. I'm a bit outnumbered here, aren't I? Come on, women. Teresa, we need you.
Okay, so we are live. I'm just checking all the systems, and I think we're all a go. So good evening, everyone. It is Monday, the 4th of October, and we are live. Now, hold on a minute, because my Zoom settings say we're not connected. But it's saying we're live. Hold on a minute. The systems around the entire world are going down. We are live, apparently. I'm just going to do a refresher. Facebook's down, Instagram's down, and now it looks like we could be down as well.
LinkedIn's on. I just saw a message pop up, everybody.
Okay, apparently we are live. What is going on with that technology? So good evening. I shall try again. It is the Property Expert Panel. It is Monday. It is the 4th of October, and it is, as far as I'm concerned, 2021. So this is the session where you get to ask your property related questions so we can help you build your wealth and get the freedom that you deserve. There's a bunch of panel members, but I am not going to do any introductions whatsoever. I'm going to hand you over to Bronwen to make a start, and then she can pass us over to someone else. So Bronwen, over to you, good self.
Hello, everybody. My name's Bronwen Vearncombe, and I'm a property expert. Actually, I'm a property investor in Hampshire. I've got this fantastic group of experts around me. Simon Misiewicz is our fantastic host, and all of these wonderful people you see around me are part of the panel. Not only are they part of my power team, but they're also investors in their own rights. They're going to introduce themselves in a minute. But who am I? I have a portfolio of properties in Hampshire, Southampton, Portsmouth, houses of multiple occupation. I have some holiday lets, I have guest houses and some developments. So quite a mixed bag, but the most important thing of all is that I love to help people learn. I'm really, really keen for people to become financially free and have the freedom that I've got as well. So that's why I'm here, and that's why I love to get all these guys together and girls. Hi, Teresa. I'm going to go straight over to our newest member of the panel, and that is Ross Maynard. So over to Ross, welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. My first day. Be gentle with me. I've got the questions lined up, hopefully. I'm a builder, if you like. I've been in construction for over 35 years. I know my face doesn't say that. I'm really excited to take your questions. Bring them on. Tim?
That was quick. I wasn't ready. Yes. Welcome.
Well done, Ross.
I'm solicitor, so you'd expect me to work really slowly. Come on. Have you ever known a solicitor who's fast? They don't exist. Right. I'm Tim.Bishop. I own a firm called Panelist. I've got about 65 staff. We cover a full range of work for private and business clients, but in particular, we have a very specialist property investor team acting for investors and developers nationwide, and that's growing rapidly. And we also have a highly specialist leasehold team, now 6 people, who deal with absolutely nothing but lease extension, freehold purchase, and right to manage. And they're probably the largest, most specialist team of a type in the country. Very proud of them. I'm also an investor and developer. I've got an 8-bed HMO, block of 6 flats that was a commercial conversion. 4 of those are service accommodation. I finally broken over the piggy bank, having been concerned about the possible dip this year, and I was entirely wrong. So I'm now in the process of buying a house for SA and also buying an office to put into a SAS pension, a small self-administered scheme pension I'm setting up, but it's going incredibly slowly. Combination of HMRC going really slowly, approving the SAS, and numerous problems in the chain with a purchase. So it's frustrating, but I'm not blaming the solicitors. And that's me. By the way, also in terms of Bishop, we also offer free initial phone advice to all property investors. So if you've got a problem, give us a call. We may be able to point you in the right direction with a simple phone call. Happy to hear from you. Now, over to Simon Hodgson.
Right, thank you very much, Tim. Right, yeah, mortgages. So I've been in property investor for over 20 years. Started out learning property investing from a guy called Russ Whitney, who was from the USA. He actually shared some of his trainings with none other than Simon Zucci, and kind of, back then, I very quickly learned that if you had a bit of knowledge and you wanted to be an investor or a professional investor, and you didn't need to have much education in order to be professional back then, most brokers didn't really understand what you were doing. or how to work with you, or how to place the right products with you. A lot of brokers didn't even really understand or know about buy-to-let mortgages, funny enough, and that hasn't really changed much. So there, there's a great big divide between a sort of standard residential mortgage broker and an investor stroke commercial broker, which is what I kind of cover, and how we do things differently. We understand, well, I understand, because I do all of these things for the guys on the team here. So yeah, that's me. Learned how to lose it all through the credit crunch, rebuild it back up, etc., etc. And I am here tonight really to help talk about anything funding wise. So I think we are going to go over now to Paul.
Evening, thanks Simon, and a warm welcome to Ross and all our listeners tonight. It's getting colder, hence the jumper, so I'm no longer Dennis the Menace. If you want to understand that, have a look at last month's video. Welcome. My name is Paul.Hilliard. I'm also a property investor. I have been for over 30 years now. I started off plan overseas. Not something I recommend, but fortunately, because of my legal and accounting background, I got it right and made good money from it, even though it was in the States. I'm also a serial portfolio investor, so I've got a portfolio in the West Midlands of HMOs, buy-to-lets, and service accommodation units. So whether I've got a 1-bed flat up to a 10-bed multi-let for the service accommodation units. But I'm also operations director for LNPG, and that means I basically look after all the suppliers for LNPG, and LNPG is a buying club. It's the UK's largest buying group for landlords, where we typically negotiate superb prices. So you get, if you went to buy Worcester Bosch boiler off the internet, you get at least a third off that. If you went to buy a Howden's kitchen, you get, in my view, a better kitchen, and definitely in the view of the Rich magazine, you get a much better Magnet kitchen, which would be about half the price of Howden's. So if you're a landlord and you're an investor and you've got some projects coming up, definitely check out LNPG at www.lnpg.co.uk. And over to Teresa.
Hi, everyone.
You're back on mute.
You're on mute.
Oh dear, we did actually challenge each other, didn't we? Who would be the first one to be on mute? And it's me. Yay. So I sort of skimmed in on time, and then I put myself on mute. So anyway, yeah. So good evening, everyone. I'm Teresa Kaczmarek, representing the National Residential Landlord Association. I've been interested in property for many years, development and refurb, but basically became a professional landlord in 2015. And I say professional insofar as that, I became accredited, and, I took the education that I knew what my legal responsibilities were in, setting tenancies up and what have you. So yes, I am here just to basically answer any questions that you might have, on the landlord rental type front. I think we have got a few in this evening, and also hi from me to Ross as well, a newest member on the panel, and of course we're not going to be gentle on you. I'm sure Simon Misiewicz will be baptized by fire, hopefully.
No,
anyway,
gentle.
So shall I? That's everyone done, I think. So unless I'm mistaken. So
except for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just going to do this slide actually. So my name is Simon Misiewicz. I'm a property tax specialist and an international tax specialist as well, focusing on tax matters in the US, UK, and in Hong Kong as well. So if you're investing in property in any of those countries, then I can help you from a tax matter. So what I thought I would do now is go over to the slides. This is whereby we can give you some updates in regards to what's going on. So before we do that, there is a checklist that all the panel members are working on at the minute. In the description box of this video, you will be able to download. So there's a link in the description box, so make sure you go ahead and press the link on there to download this checklist. This is something that we're going to be working on. It will be constantly being updated. So we'll end up doing this maybe on a monthly basis in terms of updates, but make sure you download that. It does help you to buy a property, the right property that meets your strategy, and it covers all matters in regards to finance, tax, how to do research, etc. So make sure you download that. Teresa, I'm going to go straight back over to you in terms of your slide.
Great. Okay. Thanks very much. Yes, I just wanted to touch on possession claims, because if anybody's, a landlord out there in the audience, there have been restrictions on the possession claims during the COVID pandemic. So all the possession notices were, extended. So if you wanted to give notice to your tenant to vacate the property, all the periods in time were extended to like 6 months. So basically, as of 1st of October, all the notices have reverted back to their original period. So, for example, the Section 21, the no fault route to possession, that is back to 2 months notice. And as the same for the Section 8 and all the grounds there. There are up-to-date forms, so if you are going to give notice, make sure that you are using the most up-to-date forms, so upload them directly from the government website or the NRLA. And will that be the end? Will they just remain back at that, the pre-notice period? It's hard to tell, because basically the Coronavirus Act is still still in place. So the government may well change their mind, which they can do up until March 2022. But hopefully not. Hopefully that will now remain the same, and the courts can catch up on the huge amount of cases that are going through. There is quite a large backlog. The next thing I wanted to bring up was about social media, insofar as looking for properties, advertising properties, and so on. People of a certain age. I don't know what the age of the audience is in the crowd, but obviously on the panel we are. We're not Generation Z, which apparently is like the current the generation 1997 to 2012. So Generation Z means like, they're on Zoom, the Zoom generation. So, are you on things like TikTok, for example? You might have, if you've got children, you might have seen your children on TikTok, but more and more people are using it, and it is being used for, like property. So for example, I would just like pulling up some numbers where they were basically some of the viewings on some of the videos. So there was a house for sale at 25.7 million views, letting agents UK, that 3.5 million views, property tips 2.5 million views. So NRLA have jumped on the bandwagon, and we have now got an account on TikTok. And if you've not heard of it, it's basically just a platform where you can just look at short, snappy videos. It's not like going on YouTube or like being on here where we rattle on for an hour and a half. You've got
Might cut us off. Come on, move on.
Right, move on. So anyway, TikTok, get on there. Tenants with pets. Wanted to point out that this is a niche market. We've got 7% of landlords who are advertising out there saying that they're happy to consider pets. Now, if we consider the latest count of the UK canine population at 10.5 million, so that's one dog for every 6 humans, there is a niche there. And I understand why landlords aren't keen, because with the Tenant Fee Act, we're not allowed to charge beyond like 5 weeks in rent, 5 weeks deposit. We're not allowed to make any extra additional charges on tenants. So that's sort of like, deters some landlords. But it is a niche market, and the NRLA have got some really good tips on how you can mitigate the risks, and how you can advertise without completely committing yourself to taking on people with pets. So please do consider that. Just wanted to slip in there that if you want to be a member of the NRLA, I can get a £10 off with the code there, RI123. And finally, NRLA do have a podcast with people, like listening to podcasts like, through Spotify, for example. We have got a podcast running since January, and we've got all sorts of interesting conversations going on there about energy efficiency and the benefits of remote investing, things like that, and interior design. So yeah, please do find our podcast. I feel like I've been wittering on for a bit now, so I'm gonna.
Don't worry.
Go.
Thank you, Teresa. So, I mean, if we're Generation Z listening onto TikTok, obviously we've got our very own Big Bang generation in Paul.Hilliard. So it's always nice to have the Generation Alpha. So over to you, Tim. What's your updates?
Okay, first of all, as I do most months, just give you a quick update of where my firm's at of conveyancing. And I think some people quite find this useful because actually it's very rapid information. So for example, if you're relying on what's been done at land registry, that's after completion, so it's well down the line. And even mortgages are often 2 or 3 months after the offer's been accepted. So sometimes the information we get is bang up to date. So as you can see, in the last 12 months, it's been all over the place. It went up, went down, went up, went down. But at the moment, the last 2 or 3 months, it seems to pretty much have stayed level. Now, I noticed, for example, that I think in August or September, some of the mortgage approvals were low, and perhaps Simon may deal with that later. But certainly as far as we're concerned, it seems to be fairly stable at the moment, although there does appear to be a shortage with some estate agents. So up and down, but I think it's pretty stable at the moment, and I can't see any reason for that to change for the time being. So plenty of action on the market. Next slide, please, Simon. Okay, I've been unfaithful again. I've been talking to on another show. What came up, a couple of questions came up about joint ventures. And so I thought I'd bore you in about 10 seconds with joint and several liability. Sounds boring, sounds legal, but why does it matter and what is it? Next slide will give the answer. Very simply, it provides that all parties in a partnership are liable for the partnership debts in full or in part. What that means is if you go into business with someone else outside a limited company and you've got some debts, even if there are 2 of you involved, the person who is owed the money can come after you and you alone. You then have to get it from your mate. And that can be difficult if your mates run out of money. So do be warned with joint ventures, you can be responsible for all of the debt. And so that's what joint and several liabilities. So it is an issue with setting up a joint venture, something to look into at the moment. And next slide, please. And this is just a request. At the moment, our conveyancing work is getting very busy and we're looking to expand. So if any of you know any conveyancers anywhere in the country, I'd like to know if they're good. If you think they're a great conveyancer at a lousy firm, I'd love to hear from them. We're even looking at some remote workers. So for example, the head of my conveyancing team currently lives in Bedfordshire. I haven't met him yet. He joined us in March. I'm actually due to meet him for the first time to shake hands with him this Friday, which I'm quite excited about. We're actually having an office party. So if any of you know of any good conveyancers, please let me know. We're happy to pay a £500 referral fee if we take them on. So it's a good incentive there. And I would like some conveyancers. So if any of you know someone who's good, who needs to be at a wonderful firm like ours, do let me know. That's the end of me. Thank you.
Perfect. And Ross Newboy. So if you want to unmute yourself and then give us an update of what this is all about, please go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. The building industry is reporting material shortages, which are being compounded by the HGV drivers and the lack of. From a small builder's perspective, it's not really causing any issues. However, if you're looking at larger projects at the moment, it's worth just talking to your builder and seeing how he's looking for materials. I'm not seeing it in the south here. It may be different in your part of the country. So with the shortage of materials, it brings inevitable price increases. Timber, roof tiles, believe it or not, and cement are the latest examples, up 20% on last year. Recently, again, I bought a sheet of ply, very boring, but it used to be £35. It's now up in the 47. So you can see the impact. You know, if you're looking at refurbs, redevelopments, prices are rising. Small builders, they have the highest workload for 10 years, and that is a fact if you've ever tried to get hold of one. I'm inundated.
Is that you, Ross?
Yeah, it could be.
Sorry.
So we've sort of got a perfect storm going on. We've got material shortages, we've got price increases and we've got very busy builders. Again, in the south, I'm not seeing too much of an issue. As long as you're well organised, you plan everything, you can manage most of it. Future homes, if you don't know what future homes is, I'm not going to go on because I could spend an hour on it. Please go online, Google it, read up about it. In a nutshell, 75 to 80% less carbon from new homes by 2025. And even next year, 31% reduction in carbon compared to current standards. So if you are developing, please get up to speed with it. Architects, etc., will help you, but it's worth knowing. The last bit, my inspection checklist. So I have a small training program down in Southampton on the 6th and 7th of November. It's a walkthrough with me, looking at what to look at when you're viewing properties from a building point of view. It's very interactive. Really, we're looking at what is a risk and what is an opportunity and how to identify them. So if you're interested, ross-may.com, get in touch.
If you can, Ross, if you could put that through the chat box, I will share that in the main chat box through all the platforms as well. Thank you ever so much for that, and welcome on board. Now we talk about case study. Now this looks like a blank screen for some daft reason, Bronwen. Even though
That's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just keep clicking.
I see what you've got there. Look,
I didn't mean to do that. It's obviously it's from a different.
Caught me out. Right. Okay. I'm just going to click on them, so hopefully we can get to the bottom.
Okay. Hi everybody. Last month I did a case study on a single let. It was the very first purchase that I did as an investor. So it was a maisonette in Winchester. And if you remember, it had a return on investment of about 8%, something like that. And I promised that today I would show you the houses of multiple occupation example. So this was the second property I bought. This happens to be an HMO, so a multi-let, a shared house. It's in Southampton. Here are some numbers. But the key thing on this particular one is it's an existing HMO that I bought. And the return on investment of this with 5 bedrooms is 19%. So you can compare the 8% with 19. Now, the next slide, Simon, is a very different one here, because this is an HMO that we created. So it wasn't an existing HMO. It was a house. It was a 4-bedroom house, which we converted to an HMO. So we created the bedrooms. We made sure the communal space was good, and we got planning permission. It's in an Article 4 area, so we have a license for it. So the big thing about this particular one is that this was bought with investor funds. Now, this is just a sweetener, really, because all of this is in my book. All of the case studies are in my book, going into huge amounts of detail of exactly what the costs were, line by line. But this one, you'll see that is a 6-bedroom HMO for sort of young professionals. It's in Portsmouth, slightly different area. But here are the numbers, the purchase price, the capital that was put in, which was from investors, and the refurbishment costs. So you'll see the refurb costs on this one were a lot higher than obviously an existing HMO where we had 0 refurb costs. So that added into the sort of the overall investment for that individual that came in as a joint venture. And you'll see that the return on investment here for the investor, they get half the profit. So you see with multiple rooms, 6 bedrooms, we get quite a high income per month, as long as the bedrooms are all occupied. But this is just to give you some examples of how a single let can be, if you're lucky, between maybe 5 to 8%, but with a multi-let, you can get much, much higher returns, but it's much more difficult. And you definitely need a good education, because there's a lot of pitfalls in HMO land. So this is just a sweetener, really. If you want to look at more detail, they're all in my book, Building Your Dream Life, which we will put a link in the chat box in the detail as well. So thank you for that. Next month, there'll be a different case study. Over to Simon.
Perfect. I've only got 2 updates for mine. Thank you, Bronwen, for that. I've only got 2 updates, really. The first one is to make sure that your tax returns are going to be submitted on time. If you're doing a paper-based, which is archaic, Alpha kind of Gene, or Paul.Hilliard might do it paper-based. So that's 30th of October, but for everyone else who's doing it electronically, you have until the 31st of January. So you've got plenty of time to do that. Just a couple of things that I've put September dates, not sure why, but there's a couple of events that we're running ourselves now in terms of Louise and I. So Louise has got her own show, talk about tax returns as well. So they are typically Mondays as well, not September, because otherwise we'll be going back to the future. And then that's not what the show is all about. So that's all I really want to talk about on mine. I did notice that Simon Hodgson sent some details, but your slides aren't here. So what I'll do, Simon, in the background, I will get your slides and then post you in if that's okay. So we will get to your slides, I promise you. I'm just not sure where I put them. I'll stop the slides for now, though, but I will come back to Simon's in a second. This is a live show, so if you have any questions at all, make sure that you drop those in the chat box. I'm just about to share Ross's own inventory program that he's got going on as well, so I'll drop a link in for that. And if the other panel members have got events and stuff like that you want to share with me, put them into the chat box and I'll share those as well. So let's get on with the questions, and there are a couple of questions that have been posted before with people registering in advance. So I'm going to go to those first, and then I'm going to go to any questions that you've posted, whether you're on YouTube or on LinkedIn or Twitter, not Facebook. Let's start with that one, actually. Facebook. Why is Facebook down? Has he gone bankrupt? I think we could put that out there, couldn't we? Has he gone bust? So let's put that out there. By the way, I need a lawyer straight on that one. So what's your thoughts? Why is Facebook down? Anyone know about the technology issues that are going on there? WhatsApp's down, Instagram's down, TikTok, that's still going. Let's cause some more controversy with that one.
I'm just glad we've got you as a host, Simon, because we're on multiple channels. So we've got all eventualities covered, haven't we? You know, it's a bit like HMOs. You know, you've got 6 bedrooms of rent rather than just a single let. So, you know,
it's funny I should mention HMOs there, Bronwen, because one of the questions that we've got is the first one, which is Max asks, are HMOs now a saturated strategy? How can I find HMO opportunities more efficiently? Or how can I find a good sourcing agent for HMO? Which is a lot of questions going on. So I think, Bronwen, it's worth going over to you first on that, and we'll wake up Paul.Hilliard as well straight after.
Hi, everybody. So Max, yes, great question. As you saw from my example, I started with HMOs because I wanted to get the highest return on investment to replace my corporate income. And that was 7 years ago now. And I remember myself asking that very question because it just felt like, oh my goodness, everyone's doing this. And is it saturated? And I thought, oh my goodness, it's not possible. But absolutely it is. And it still is now. And I tell you why, because demand is really high. If you take young people, they perhaps coming out of university, they've been used to sharing houses. They can't afford to live in a flat because of all the bills. And actually they don't want to live on their own. They actually want to live with their mates. So we're not building enough houses either. So there's huge demand for this type of living. But the issue here with HMOs is that there's a lot of rules and regulations, and some cities, quite a lot of cities, are finding that HMOs, especially around universities, are changing the way that streets look and feel. So they're putting in what's known as Article 4 areas, which is sort of restricting the density of houses of multiple occupations. So when there's an Article 4 area, you do need to understand what the rules and regulations are with that particular council. But, doing your due diligence, understanding that, getting a really good education around HMOs means that it's perfectly possible. So you saw my Portsmouth example just now. I remember very well that example because as soon as I saw the house up for sale, I phoned my planning expert and I gave him the postcode and the number on the street. And I said to him, is this likely to be allowable in this council? And he did a few, literally a couple of minutes on his system. And he said, yes, density rules are this, this, and this. There's one other in the street. Yes, this will be fine. So there you go. You've just got to do a bit more learning, a bit more effort. And in terms of sources, my goodness, yes, not only will you have to do your due diligence on HMOs, even if you use a sourcer, but you're also going to have to do your due diligence on the sourcer. So let's move to someone else, because I could talk for hours on this, and I'm more than happy for Max to give me a call. I have a half-hour chat link as well. So if someone wants to go into any more detail, please do. Who else wants to answer this question?
Go for it, Tim, and then Paul, if you're free to talk about it more, please do.
From a slightly weird point of view, I'm definitely the group's self-obsessed nerd. So, I come up with some pretty weird stuff. There's a fascinating article in The Economist, and I love The Economist, that shows how nerdy I am, a couple of weeks back, all about demographics. Now, the critical thing, of course, when we're looking at actually, is there going to be enough space, is how many people are going to be. Now, I'll be interested to see what Bronwen says, but my instinct is that the HMO market is predominantly aimed at youngish people. 18 to 30 is probably, I would have thought, probably at the peak. Well, what's interesting, that's exactly the group in the population that are going through a significant rise. For example, at the moment, 18-year-olds, there are 715,000 in 2020. By 2030, there'll be 893,000. So that's a 25% increase. So therefore, potentially, over the next 10, 15 years, the number of people who will be needing, in my opinion, rented accommodation is significantly going up, disproportionate to the rest of the population. So therefore, in terms of HMO, I would have thought, therefore, that would mean probably a disproportionate need in increase, certainly in the next 10, 15 years. May change after that, but hey, we haven't got a crystal ball that we're looking to 2045 onwards. What was also interesting is the same article says these people are going to become increasingly clustered in university towns. So again, if you've got somebody in university towns, Portsmouth, Southampton, and all the others, of course, that may be a good place for HMOs. So there you go, boring demographics and its real effect on the housing market.
Well, you could only get that from a solicitor, couldn't you? Thanks, Tim, for that little update. Yeah, in my experience, I'm finding that because of rent-to-rent, and if you don't know what that is, then please contact Bronwen, who has got a superb video on that. But rent-to-rent, there's a lot of people entering the market on a rent-to-rent basis, and they seem to be converting standard buy-to-lets into HMOs, sometimes not very well. So if you want to look at that type of market, and it's a good way to get into property if you've got low capital, then have a look at that via Bronwen. But what I was going to say was that although there is a lot of people doing, or a lot of competition from people doing rent to rent, what I found is that if you can differentiate your product, i.e. your rooms, particularly on places like Spare Room, and Rentify and other rental apps, then you will stand out and you'll be able to let your properties far quicker. And obviously what I would recommend is that you become an LNPG member and use the LNPG furniture company, which is Fusion Furniture. Absolutely fantastic. And they've just released their 2022 designs. As regards finding HMO opportunities, yes, you can do the hard way and go around looking at 3 beds that you can convert to 5 beds, or 4 beds convert into 6 beds, as per Bronwen's case study. And that's how I started. I converted a 2-bed Victorian property into a 5-bed fully ensuite HMO. That was my very first HMO back in 2009 when I retired from the corporate world. The method I would suggest, besides doing that, looking on obviously Rightmove, is to check the HMO register in your area and contact those, and just do a letter to everyone, because you may come across someone who's interested in selling up. Landlords are coming under a lot of scrutiny, particularly from local authorities looking to find multiple streams of income, and they see landlords as a direct route to market for that. So have a look at the HMO registers, and a good source for a good sourcing agent, if you narrow back out of COVID restrictions, I would recommend attending your local networking events, mainly property investor networks, but there's also progressive property networking as well. Those are very active throughout the UK. I think there's definitely over 50 that Simon runs as pin events throughout the UK. Some of those are still on a virtual basis, but I'm saying definitely recommend attending networking events and seeing who is active as regards sourcing HMOs in your area. And that way you can get to, as Bronwen says, do your due diligence, but you're doing it in person and you can check, see if you can get on and work with that person. So back to you, Simon.
Thank you ever so much, and great answers as always. Panel members, thank you ever so much indeed. Now, if you can get over the creaky chair of Tim.Bishop, who sounds like you ain't from around here now, are you, boy? So we have to get over that. But Paul.Hilliard has got a wealth of experience. He's been investing in property since 1848. So, you do need to listen to him. He'll always be a great source of advice and tips. Sanjay asked, and this is, again, a pre-question that's being put through. I have a retail shop with a 2-bedroom flat above on one title. They can be split. How much would it cost? So Tim, we'll come over to you. What are the advantages and disadvantages of doing so? So what I'm going to do here is a 3-prong attack here. I want to go over to Tim from the legal perspective, then over to Simon Hodgson from a mortgage perspective. And I'd like to go bring Ross in to talk about the kind of issues you might have from a building aspect as well. So start with you, Tim.
Okay. Basically, there are, I suppose, when I mentioned title splitting to one of my lawyers, he always rolls his eyes because he's very precise. And in fact, there are effectively 2 types of title splits. So imagine one, you own a field. Okay, you own a field and you want to divide it into 2. That's pretty straightforward. You simply do a line down the middle. You can create 2 freehold titles and you can own both of them. So that is a pure title split. However, what most people talk about title split actually isn't really title split at all. What you're doing is usually creating subleases. So the classic example would be, say, a 4-bedroom house that you wanted to turn into 2-bedroom flats. Well, actually, you're not creating 2 freehold units. You're actually creating 3 units. You're creating the freehold. That's the building overall, where the freeholder owns, is responsible for common parts, roof, garden, that kind of thing. And then there are 2 separate leases. And the only thing you do need to know there is you can't grant a lease to yourself. So in other words, if I own a building as Tim.Bishop, my house, for example, decided to put it into flats, I can't grant 2 leases to Tim.Bishop. And what I could do, I could grant it to my wife, or I could grant it to a company owned by me, but you can't grant it to someone else. So they're the real issues. Which one is it going to be? It can either be a pure split where you end up with 2 separate bits, but otherwise, usually, it's actually a lease you're creating. Now, if you're creating a lease, there are implications, obviously, in terms of insurance and mortgages, if you've got existing mortgages, but that's probably more for Simon. So yeah, there are issues there. There are forms to be filled in, etc. But yeah, that's how you do it. You are creating a lease that you can then sell on, and if you want to, you can hold the freehold and then sell one or more of the leases off.
Right, I think that's where I pick up then, Tim. Okay, so from a mortgage perspective, Simon, did Sanjay say what type of commercial element, who might be the tenant or the occupier in the ground floor part of the building?
I think we can just go on a broad brush. It's a restaurant or it's a shop or some type.
And that's a kind of a loaded question for all of you guys watching out there, because the type of tenant you have in the ground floor might determine how we might approach this building. Okay, so if we start from the very beginning, in a commercial building, you have what's known as strength of covenant. That's who actually is in the building. So if you've got downstairs coffee shop and Costa take it on, they take a 15-year lease with no break clauses. That's about the strongest type of covenant you could possibly get. And it will increase the value of your property. So there's a great way of adding value to property by finding stuff that needs to be turned around in relatively good parts of the high street and getting higher level tenants in. But it also kind of leads on to what you might need to do with upstairs. Now, vanilla buy-to-let lenders are okay doing buy-to-lets on flats above commercial if they are generally deemed to be quite benign activities. So offices, that kind of thing are relatively easy to get. But if you've got foodstuffs or cooking preparation going on downstairs, that then kind of falls out of the vanilla buy-to-let lender and pushes it more towards the challenger bank, commercial banks. Okay, so depending on how and who it is will mean what we do. So potentially you could get a semi-commercial mortgage on that property. You do not need to split the leases, and a good broker will look at the types of tenants you've got in there, work out how it will value up, and whether that value will be enough for you to do it. The other thing you can do, which is, as Tim has kind of commented on, which is to create separate leases, and you then have a lease for the downstairs commercial unit, you have a lease for the upstairs, and we now then go for what's known as blended interest rates. So we take the downstairs to a straight commercial lender and get a commercial mortgage on it because it's commercial property, and then we go for the upstairs, we take that to a standard buy-to-let lender and get a much better rate. So you'll pay a higher rate on the commercial element downstairs, a lower rate on upstairs, and we then work out what the value of each part is, and then we get a blended interest rate across the whole of the building. Again, you can get better values doing that as long as the flat is considered to be saleable and mortgageable to the owner-occupier market. And again, that is determined by who is downstairs. So it's quite a broad question, Simon. I think I'm going to kind of leave it there because I could possibly talk forever about this subject. And I know that you don't want me to talk to you about it, Simon. So I think I'll leave it there.
Why don't we bring you in, Ross?
Yeah, so from a build construction point of view, it's a difficult one to answer because I'm assuming, and I'll have to make some assumptions on this, that this is a shop below, 2 flats. They're all running on the same electricity supply. They've all got one common water supply. They've got common gas supply. So if we assume
it's actually an office. It's offices. Yes, it's offices throughout at the moment.
Right.
It's because I know Max has spoken.
All right. Okay. Good. So I don't need to assume. So the things that spring to mind initially are utilities. You've got to split the utilities out. That can be an easy one. It can be a difficult one, depending on where you are in the country. By utilities, I mean gas, water, electric. The water is normally the hardest one. Drains are one thing that everybody forgets. Architects certainly never take them into account. You need to get drainage, and that drainage needs to be split and separated as you build. So you can't share drainage as such between flats. Access would be the next one I'd be concerned about. I've looked at lots of similar properties, and whilst you can get in as they are at the moment, access for the flats above and fire routes out, etc., are always a challenge. And the last one, which is a really practical one, but look at your neighbours. Who's around there? Flats don't sell well when there's a Chinese one side and an Indian the other, because the smells will eventually come into the flat. So just look at your neighbours, look who's around there, and see if it will work.
Never go hungry, though, would you?
No, definitely not.
Perfect. Well, thank you ever so much for that. One thing I want to do is actually go to Simon, because I've finally got your slides now. So let's go back to the professionalism that I am. So why don't you take us through a couple of slides?
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, guys. There's a bit of a turnaround then. I'll keep it short and sweet. So as we've ended the stamp duty holiday, we're back to normal. Lending is still really liquid out there. There's lots of money. Funding lines are really strong, and what we're finding is rates are now getting more competitive. Without our sphere, investment mortgages, the demand's still really high. I wouldn't necessarily say that I agree with the fact that the market's falling away. I think it's still just as strong, and it looks like it's going to continue that way. But yeah, lenders are keen to get out. So we've got 2-year fixed rates for limited companies now down at 2.65. These are lower than pre-pandemic levels, which kind of gives you an idea of where lenders are taking this. 5-year fixed rates at 2.99. And both of those can include HMOs. So they're great, absolutely fabulous. And then the next one, so what I wanted to kind of give you was a competitive sort of comparison with the commercial lenders. So commercial lenders are also bringing their rates down as well. So Shawbrook across the board have brought their rates down in some circumstances by 0.5%. They've also created a brand new product, which they haven't done up to this point, which is dipping their toe into the more vanilla buy-to-let market. So they've got a 3.69% 5-year fixed rate product, which is only available to non-portfolio landlords. So that's landlords with less than 4 properties, for those who are new on the call. And that includes anything that's in your own name or a limited company, but that's a really low rate for those guys. And they'll find ways of getting around their usual experience criteria. Hampshire Trust, they've also lowered their rates down by 0.4, and they've actually got rates starting at 3.84 for a 65% loan to value proposition. And the reason we have these lenders, and they're more expensive than the other lenders on the other slide that I showed you, is that these guys will do things that the other lenders won't. So when we were talking about that mixed use property and potentially having, let's say, a Chinese takeaway downstairs, these guys will still lend on it, whereas your more vanilla lender definitely won't lend on it. So there's a penalty, but it's not as bad as it used to be. You know, the gap is narrowing. And Interbank, we've got an 80% LTV product. So they'll do a commercial valuation, commercial loan, and lend up to 80% loan to value. And the rates are still only 4.54. Can't be bad, can it? So I think really what I'm saying is that, yeah, the market's really getting competitive out there. It looks like it will continue to sharpen as lenders are vying for our borrowing. And that was my update from 7 o'clock.
Well, I'm not going to leave you there because there is a question that's aimed at you, not personally. This is a very professional show. Steve has said, I'm currently out of work. I already have a buy-to-let and done for many years, but set up a mortgage when I was working. My fear now is the ability to secure another buy-to-let with only income from buy-to-let property, especially when it's one. My wife does have an income. Now, he doesn't say what income that is, but we can assume it's employment income. From your perspective, Simon, what issues and how can they navigate around that?
Okay, yeah, ordinarily it will knock out some of the most competitive vanilla buy-to-let lenders buying in your own name. However, Steve really does need to book a call in with an accountant stroke tax advisor. I can't think of one right at the moment. Oh yeah, Simon. There he is, look, slopey shoulder. Yeah, he's the man. And try and decide whether it makes sense for you to buy in your own name or a limited company. After that, there are enough lenders out there, certainly enough lenders, because of course you've owned a buy-to-let property or some buy-to-let properties and will have filed a tax return. So you have an income, you've got an income we can show, and there's enough lenders out there that have no minimum income. So as long as we can demonstrate you've got an income, I could certainly get you mortgages for single lets, HMOs, commercial HMOs, blocks of flats, no real issue. I might be making that sound a bit easier than it is, because it's not necessarily as easy as I'm making it sound, but for sure, Steve, if you have got the education, and of course you'll have reached out to Bronwen, I guess, to help sharpen out that education, we can definitely find you the funding to make the project work, for sure. But do reach out to Simon. Pat, if you can, send the tax question in before the end of the session. Yeah, we'd like to get a tax question out to him.
You're going on mute. You're going on mute. Oh dear, that's so tragic. He's falling off. Everyone, he's falling off Zoom. I'm afraid that's what happens when someone else has the power. So let's. There's Daniel. I just want to give a shout out to you, Daniel. You're obviously on YouTube. Hopefully, you're still with us. But Daniel said, "I'm 19. I've just saved over £15,000. And what's the best way to get into property?" And I think what it would be good is go to you, Bronwen, on this, because I know you've dealt with people that are starting out in property. That's what your book in education is all about. So maybe we should provide a link. If you've got a link for your education product, let's get that on there. But this guy's 19, £15,000. Awesome.
Amazing. Amazing. So well done, first of all. That's tremendous at your age. I'm coming across more and more young people, to be honest, who are researching this stuff. I think, forget the careers advisors telling you to become an accountant or even a banker, as I was, heaven forbid. I think people have got their eyes set on potential opportunities. And I've got a couple of 18-year-olds learning with me at the moment. And I must say, it's refreshing to see their perspective on things. Now, it's perfectly possible to start learning at that tender age. And if he's already got 15,000, wonderful. You know, you can certainly afford my program at 695, and there may be a discount for people on today's call. So, you know, start with that education, start with getting your confidence up, because at that age, you can feel a little bit, you know, you don't have enough experience, but that's not the case. You know, you can go along to PIN meetings, you can start to have that same language, and you can indeed work with other people. So look at us around this room. You know, we all go to PIN meetings, we all like to talk to other people, and I met Ross at a PIN meeting, and he became a joint venture partner with me. I mean, we did a block of 6, we did 6 flats, didn't we? A house to 6 flats. Amazing. Now if I was 8. Oh, flats. Sorry, 8. 8 flats. Oh my goodness. Well, eight studio rooms recently, but before that, Walnut Grove, wasn't it? My goodness. So it's absolutely feasible. So what I suggest is you send me your details. I will post you my book, Building Your Dream Life, and that will open your eyes up to the possibilities. So, oh, look, it has to go in front of you. So, yeah, well done, first of all. And yeah, get in touch with me and we can have a chat separately. Okay, who else?
Well, I'm going to move on to the questions, if that's okay, Bronwen, just so we can speed along with some of these questions and answers. By the way, if you're watching this live, whatever platform you're on, whether you are on Indeed, on YouTube, not Facebook, but Twitter, we will get onto TikTok. Maybe we can do that. Maybe we can go on there and be street cred, like Teresa was saying.
We go on for too long, Simon.
We probably do. Yes, that's Simon Hodgson for you. But we can go on many different platforms, and we will do that. We've got a question here. This should be aimed at Tim, so Tim, be on the buzzer. Teresa is saying, not this Teresa, but our Teresa, is saying, it could be Teresa, I'm not sure. But anyway, it says, I'm buying a leasehold property. It seems that in order to rent it out in the future, the lease requires my tenant to enter into a deed of covenant. With the freeholders. Anyone heard of this? So any kind of insights where they might be able to get some details? I guess this can come to you, can't they?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is have a look at the lease. I think the advice always is, when there's any leasings, read your lease. And it always amazes me that although it's very boring, actually everyone does need to read their lease. And if they don't understand exactly what it means, they need to ask a solicitor. And if they don't understand what the solicitor said, the solicitor's doing a bad job. So what it might be, again, I'm guessing because I haven't got the lease in front of me, but I guess what this might be is sometimes there are restrictions on leases as to what you can and cannot rent out. So there might be a complete ban. So, for example, it might be that you simply can't rent it out, or you can't use a flat as a business. Or it's what's quite common in the old days, and is now coming back into vogue, is you can't rent out to more than one family unit. So it may be one of those. So it might be referring to actually the need to get the freeholder's approval. Now, if you, again, that's why you need to check the lease, because the freeholder's approval might be that they have the ability to say no. It might be alternatively that they charge a fee. So you need to be able to have a look at that. So it's a bit of a general answer, but that's because I can't see the lease. But yeah, we'll certainly have a look at that for you. But there may well be a restriction. And I would make sure you know exactly what you're buying if you want to let it out, because you might find actually end up that the freeholder can stop you, and therefore suddenly you haven't got a buy to let, you've got a flat to live in.
Great one. There's a couple of questions that's come through almost specifically towards tax. So as we know, this is a property investment show, not a property tax show. So we have got live events. So I will take a couple of these, but you guys, you know, wait for my show next week or the week after, and don't listen to that, Simon Hodgson. Simon Roberts has asked a question: can a limited company with a mix of buy-to-lets, investments, and furnished holiday lets trading sponsor as a SAS? And it is possible for you to invest into a SAS. And indeed, you could have a SAS that can loan money into your limited company as well. So there's definitely different things you should do with that. But as I would say that SASs are complex in nature, and they are certainly something that's highly regulated. So I would make sure that you ask your pension provider, SAS pension provider, to help you out with that one. A question that's came from a pre-registered question. This is Danielle saying, let's say I own 2 limited companies with 3 buy-to-lets each. Would it be possible to merge them instead of selling the properties from one company to the other? Now, that's an interesting one, because if you have 2 limited companies and you want to sell one property to another, you would incur things like capital gains tax and stamp duty land tax, which is exactly what Danielle was saying. But if you have a group structure whereby one company is owned 100% by the other company, then you can move properties from one to another without having to pay capital gains tax or stamp duty land tax. So it's all possible, but you do need to get a tax specialist to certainly help you with that. It's not the most straightforward, and it does require you to restructure your company as well. Everyone listening in, if, by the way, you are listening to the show and you have a question, please, please, please do type that question in. I'm reading the live questions that we have got, so make sure you do get your questions to me, and I will make sure I do that. Bill's asked a question, and it kind of echoes back in terms of what makes a good location for an HMO. And I think we've all kind of suggested that you probably need to do a bit of research around that, Billy, in terms of saying, Article 4 areas. You need to just look at all local authorities in terms of Article 4s, find out where they are. And then, just as we talked about, whether you go to a progressive meeting or a PIN meeting, go to those locations, find out what people are doing in those locations, and then educate yourself. Then go get Bronwen's books, go on her courses, because she talks about HMOs, she teaches about HMOs, so be educated as much as possible. Bob has asked a question, this is for Simon. Are there any buy-to-let trackers for term mortgages available, e.g. tracker for remaining terms rather than for 2 to 5 years, etc.? Simon, over to you.
Yes, there are. They're not very popular, to be fair. Very few people pick them these days. They're more available to the non-limited company lending market than they are limited companies. But yes, it is possible. Yeah, short answer.
Brilliant. That's so insightful as well. We've got Links 3030. Here's asked the question. Hi, Bronwen. Gareth Williams here, Wealth Builders. Nice to see you again. I have a JV with Contact and wanted to know how to find more of them. So in terms of JVs, how might someone get a JV apart from going to networking events?
Okay, joint ventures. We've got a lot of acronyms today. So if anyone doesn't understand what SAS, SA, HMO stand for, then come and ask me. But in terms of joint ventures are very different to, say, somebody investing with you on a loan basis. A joint venture is where you're sharing skills. So it could be that, say, take that case study I showed earlier. An investor came, put the money into that. I found the property, I did everything to create an HMO for that. So they put the money in, I put the skill and knowledge in, and we shared the profit 50-50. And we continue to share that profit, because a joint venture is not just something that's overnight. It's usually something for either a number of years or for a particular project, like Ross and I did on creating flats. So a joint venture, the risks with a joint venture are that you share the downsides as well as the upside. So if something were to go wrong with a project, or the market changed, or COVID happens, out of your control, but it's going to impact that project, then you will share the risk with the JV partner. So, can have a huge upside, but you've got to do your due diligence on that individual, and just as much as they have to do on you. So my JV partners, I always make sure that I know them well, that I've checked them out, that I've perhaps got to know them over a number of months, if not years. And, then when you go into it, you do proper documentation. So joint ventures can be fantastic, particularly when they bring the skill set that you don't have and they bring expertise, but there are downsides as well. So yeah, over to Tim.
I think I briefly mentioned this last time in terms of joint ventures. There are two things. Obviously, there's the legal side of it in terms of getting that right. But I think that the point Bronwen mentioned is very relevant, and that's the lack of due diligence people do in choosing a joint venture partner. I went on to, some years ago, a course all about JVs, 2-day course, and I said, and they talked about, do your due diligence. So I said, well, what do you mean by that? And they said, oh, you have to ask someone else. So we have produced a due diligence checklist. So Simon, is there anywhere, I think I mentioned it last time, but we now have a link to it. All you've got to do is sign up for it. So where can I put that link, Simon? Because it's basically a simple free downloadable link all about all the kind of stuff you can check on the joint venture partner. So where do I put that
If
link?
you put that into the chat box in Zoom, I can then share that out across all the platforms.
Being an old bloke, I'll see if I can manage it.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. So just going on from the questions, if you are watching this live, make sure that you type in your questions. We will get back to you on those questions. Abidum was saying, I'm buying a tenanted 3-bedroom house. The vendor has indicated a vacant possession, but currently a family tenant wants to stay. At what point can I serve Section 3 and 48? What can I issue as a new AST? Teresa, that's a great question for you to answer, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's one of those situations where you probably do need some specialist advice, because you'd need to run through exactly, the tenancy agreement, what agreement is in place, isn't a short-hold tenancy, when was it set up, how was it set up, was it set up correctly? So yeah, I probably would get more specialist advice on that, just to go through that more personal detail, so you do get the right information. But as far as setting up a new tenancy, once you've got possession of the, once you own the property, you can just set up a new tenancy agreement, but that means that you will be in a new fixed term with those tenants. So if you are confident, you've done your due diligence, you're confident that those tenants will be fine, then yeah, just enter into a new fixed period with them. But obviously you do have to check,
what about serving notice? What's the best approach with that? If you don't want that family in that property, what's the best thing to do nowadays?
Well, serving notice is basically the usual, either Section 21, probably no fault route to possession. So that's a 2-month notice. But you have to bear in mind that the courts are basically dysfunctional. So they were dysfunctional before the pandemic, and they're they're even worse than before. There's a huge backlog of cases. On average, it's taking landlords about 15 months to get possession back of the properties. So you have to be really careful that, you've done your due diligence on those tenants. Just be very careful, I would say. It's difficult to get them out.
Now, before I go over to Bronwen on this point, because there's something that someone's asked a question, a YouTube live question was, what's the benefits of accreditation? You talked about accreditation and being a professional. What's the purpose of accreditation for the NRLA? I know you talk about the accreditation scheme there, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, I basically, before I even rented my property out, I became accredited because I saw it as a way, as I'm sure everybody on the panel will agree, having the education up front is always going to stand you in good stead. Well, I still made mistakes, but hey ho. So you've got the education in place, and then to the outside world, by using the you'll have the accredited landlord logos that you can use. You're showing to the outside world that you're committed to education and committed to a good standard of service and housing standard. So I think it just gives, if you're in an area where there's a lot of competition, that would perhaps make you stand out from the crowd.
Bronwen, you've got your hand up, so why don't we go to you?
It was just on that other question. I think if someone's buying a property and it's already got tenants in, you can buy it subject to vacant possession, and the current owner should be serving a notice because he's selling the property. So just an obvious one, really, if he's buying it in that way.
That's good points, very valid points. Just a quick one from someone on YouTube Live says, Links 3030 was saying, can I create a website stating a 5% interest loans, for example? I'm assuming here that you're looking for people to loan money to you and you pay an interest. just be very careful. You do the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, Financial Service Authority used to be. You do need to be aware that that's a regulated activity whereby you are publicly saying how much of a return on investment you're giving. So you do need to be regulated. So please don't create websites stating that. You might get yourself in hot water. Talking about hot water, I'll be asked a question about what gas price hikes, what can I do with the landlords, and how do we manage this? I'm going to give this out to the panel members, because obviously without gas you don't have hot water, do you? And that's the whole point of HMOs, is that we pay for the utilities for our tenants. What issues are you facing, Bronwen, and what faces are you from the start of the borrowers, Paul.Hilliard?
It's a great question, and it's very topical, and I'm sure that's why the question was asked. So yes, as HMO landlords, we generally, and not always, but usually, we include all the bills. So utilities is one of the biggest, and gas prices are going up rapidly. So yeah, the aim is, if you're refurbing, as I do, and you use a great builder like Ross, Ross is going to tell you, you don't want a gas boiler. You want to do this electric jobby. So he can tell us about what that's all about. So what I've tended to have done with my newer properties or refurbed properties is to go all electric. But that wasn't because I knew gas would be going up, but we want to make sure that our properties are efficient, and going electric with some of these new amazing newfangled boilers can be very efficient for the future. So, and the one other thing I will mention, and I'll give a link, Simon, is that I have a company that manages my utilities for me. So we find the best provider, we do it on a fixed rate, and we have all our utilities on commercial rates. So if you're a professional landlord and you want to manage your utilities, use a broker, as I do, and I'll give you their details, because they are fantastic. I don't even have to worry about when the fixed rates are coming up, because they let me know. They then say, here's your choices. It doesn't mean to say they won't go up, but I can fix them for several years, which makes it really easy for me, but also I'm using an expert, as I like to do. Over to, who was that? The person with the squeaky chair, Tim, was it?
Yep, the man with the squeaky chair. What I'm going to do is go over to Teresa first, because what I want to do is go over to Ross second, and then Simon. So, and there's a leading question as part of this segment. So Teresa, you got your hand up. Why don't you take us through your details?
Talking about the gas prices going up.
She's on mute. She's on mute again.
Sorry.
It seems to click. It clicks off when you start, and then
I've got a sensitive device.
It's when she clicks the neck like that, it turns on and off.
Yeah, I'm fully automated. Yeah, so the gas prices. If you are a landlord who's paying for the gas, so you're worried about the price going up, for example, if it's included within the rent, you can include a clause, like a fair usage clause, in the tenancy agreement. So you could kind of work out, what would be a standard usage in a tenancy, and then just say anything above that, then they will be responsible for paying it. So you could do it that way. You could increase the rent as well. That's another way.
That's good. Well, the reason why I wanted to bring, and I'm actually going to bring Paul.Hilliard into this as well, so hopefully Ross and Paul, you can come on to this. But if gas prices are obviously going to be going up, we want to be talking about efficiencies, EPCs, which is what I'm going to bring Simon into last. But starting with you, Ross, we've got to start being more insulated and making sure that heat doesn't go out. We talked about things like extractor fans and putting systems in place to prevent, overheating the house and not losing heat. What kind of tips can you give to people in this regard, especially when utility prices are going up?
I think there's a massive balance and a massive calculation to do from the cost of new technologies, and the technologies are there. ground source, air source, heat pumps are all out there, but they are very expensive. And the sort of rises you're talking about at the moment will not compensate you for the cost of the install of that technology. Simple things, I mean, and we'll talk about it on EPCs a bit later, but insulate your loft, insulate your walls with the right material. Make sure you've got the right material in there, and make sure your windows are sealed. And again, there's a question on windows and fences, so we'll leave that one for a bit later, but they're the simple ones. Extractor fans, shuttered extractors, shuttered grills on the outside to try and keep the heat in.
And Paul, from your perspective, obviously we're talking about supplies, aren't we, in terms of how people might insulate their homes. What can LNPG do to help? Yeah,
I totally agree with Ross's comments. You know, you've got to be careful that your cost to install does not supersede the savings you're ever going to make. And that's one of the issues with EPCs. But what I would suggest is that, as Bronwen suggested, always look to fix your prices in advance. On HMOs, always look to do commercial rates because they will be better than residential rates. And the other important thing to consider when you're looking at utility, Ross touched on it, look at future advances, but you can also get some seriously good equipment that we'll look at. You've got smart TRVs, for example, I've got installed in one of my HMOs, and that will monitor that. If the windows are open, it will switch the radiator off. So, that's one of the common experiences I've ever come across, is that when you walk into HMOs, they're usually very warm. People are always in their shorts and T-shirts, and the windows are open. So you don't get condensation issues because the windows are open. Whilst you might want that, you don't want your heat going straight out. So, as I said, you can get TRVs. You can get, obviously, Hive and similar apps such as that, where you can remotely program. So particularly on SA units, your service accommodation, if your Airbnb is empty for a week, you don't have to go and visit it. You just open up the app and switch the heating down to your minimum setting. So look at what smart apps are available. Always check what it's going to cost you to do that. And of course, if you're going to do that, then look at, for LNPG members, you've got the likes of Wolseley, who can give you some advice up to which ones to go through, or you go to Worcester Bosch and they've got their own smart TRVs that they've just launched this year. So there's plenty of opportunities out there to save money, but bear in mind they will cost you to set up in the first place.
Just before I go over to Simon, because these are very interesting points, and I'm looking at it from a finance perspective of, if you are saying to people, we'll pay for utilities, you've got to make sure you track it. One of the devices we use, funny enough, is something that we can install into every room of a property, and we can check the temperature of that property, and we can moderate it. So if we know, and it actually tracks people if they're in and out of the rooms as well. And if it's not, we've got an automation system to say, well, actually, we can take that the temperature down for them if it's being crazily heated at 24 degrees. So there are technologies that you certainly can use to monitor that. To be fair, we use the same technology for noise as well, to prevent people from making too much noise and upsetting the other kind of people in there. So we've got some great technology we're using. So I'll talk to you more about that in a different show, because Louise and I are going to do something about holiday lets and technology and how it can really help you automate your business. But I want to go to Simon Hodgson, because we want to talk about mortgages and EPCs and the Green Deal in terms of the mortgages. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's been a theme that's been sort of bubbling away over just under the last 6 months. The cheapest green EPC mortgage out there at the moment is a discounted variable at 1.99% in a limited company. Granted, it comes with a 2% arrangement fee, so some of the discount is kind of eroded, but nonetheless, it is definitely cheaper, and it's an area where there is more competitiveness coming into the market, without doubt. So if you can make your property efficient, I think it works in two ways. So if you're advertising that property, you can advertise it and make sure that the prospective tenant knows that you've taken steps to bring the energy efficiency of that property up, so that the cost for them running it is less, so they're going to save money. And you can also then market that property at a higher rent because it sits above the competition, and then access a mortgage product that has got a lower interest rate. So actually increase your profit margin. So it's definitely something, you know, we should definitely all be doing as landlords. Don't look at it as an expense, look at it as a way to actually increase the profitability of your business without a shadow of a doubt.
Thank you ever so much for that. And just to finish off this theme, there is a question. I know that Ross was asking about this as well. So Joe asked, can anyone please confirm if this is also their understanding? Apparently Fencer don't allow Fencer registered installers to certify windows or bifold doors on a new build. Therefore, is the whole point of buying through and using Fencer approved supply installer is no longer relevant? Not quite sure, but Ross will fill that in. So is it suitable windows, external doors, and correctly installed, addressed at building control level? And that is sufficient for conveyancing. Again, we'll go over to you for that one, Ross.
Okay, so let's clear up Fencer. Fencer is the Fenestration Self-Assessment Scheme. Fenestration means the arrangements of windows in a building, if you didn't know that. It's a government-backed or a government incentive scheme for windows and doors. It's really targeting the replacement market. It came in around 2002. If you remember, early 90s, mid 90s, late 90s, everybody was replacing wooden windows with UPVC, and it was a way of controlling it. To try and answer the question, because they're a government body, they're given a remit. And the remit doesn't extend to the following: new conservatories, new porches or existing porches where there's no heating, loft conversions, property conversions, i.e. a house being split into multiple flats, new builds, new extensions, repairs where the frame is not included, and commercial properties. So on top of all of that, they assume that that type of work is covered by the local building control. So the question is correct. It is certified by sign-off from building control. Long-winded answer, I know, but for me, if you're going to have windows installed, you can get anybody can install a window, but not anybody can do it correctly. And when you start getting damp and you start getting bricks, drop-down cavities that are causing damp and that sort of thing, that's where you really want somebody that is Fencer. So my recommendation would always be to use a Fencer contractor. Make sure you get the certificate for any replacements on the existing properties. Other than that, new builds, it's covered by your NHBC or your building control sign-off.
Perfect answer. Tim.
Talking of fenestration, I can't resist the opportunity to share what is possibly my favourite word: defenestration, throwing someone out of a window. Just thought I'd tell you.
I can't believe he came on this show just to do that. I'd much rather him with his headphones. That makes him look like a pilot, though, as well. So that's one for that. So, what question from Farida has asked? The question is: what is the best way to find an empty commercial property and then find a tenant to fill it before completion? So, apart from the obvious boarded up windows because someone smashed them, what are the best ways to find an empty commercial unit? Has anyone got any views on that? And how do you fill a commercial unit, for that matter? Panel members, this is where you do bail me out. No one's doing it. Brilliant. Thanks for that. So
there's quite a lot of empty. There's quite a lot of empty commercial properties on the high street. Funnily enough. So, I mean, it's quite easy to walk up and down the high street and just go, right, okay, there's an opportunity. And then I suggest you find a commercial agent and ask them, because they will know what's either on the market that might not even have a sign outside it, or they can go look for you. I've used commercial agents really well in that way because they know what's happening with all the commercial agents generally in the area. So that's just off the top of my head, but I'm sure my colleagues could provide a lot more information than me.
If I remember rightly, Estates Gazette is often a good source of commercial property as well. Some stuff that actually never gets near local agents. Estate Gazette, if you get on, they do have a mailing list, and they'll keep you up to date with stuff that often never appears on local sites. So if you don't want necessarily to wander up and down your own high street, have a look on Estates Gazette and sign up.
And from a very basic level, you've got to know what you're looking for in terms of the building, what you're wanting to do with it, who is the tenant you want to put in there. The simple things for me are the ones that really make the difference. then you can walk up and down the high street. Pointless walking up and down the high street till you know what you're looking for.
No, absolutely. So a couple of questions that's come through. This is a pre-one. So Vincenzo's asked question is, this is for me, how likely is it able to get a deduction for expenses if I don't stick for the like-to-like criteria? Just for anyone listening, what is a deductible expense? So obviously you have a rental income and then you want expenses to go against it. And typically you are buying a property from an agent, you want to do it up, but there's going to be certain expenses that you can offset against your rental income, and there's some expenses you cannot. And it talks about like-for-like expenses. What is like-for-like? Well, if you, according to HMRC's own legislation, if you have a like-for-like expense, so you are replacing a kitchen with a pretty much the same kind of standard of kitchen, obviously modern, but the number of cabinets, then that expense can go against your rental income. There is something that we suggest in the optimized world, is that we've got the 3 R's. So if you want to write them down, please do. And that stands for repair, replace, renew. So repair, replace, renew is the concept. And if you can imagine that you've got a replacement of a bathroom or a kitchen suite, can be offset as long as it's like for like, so not crazily different. If you are going to repairing anything, so if you've got broken cabinets or you've got tiles on your roof that you're repairing, then those costs can be offset as well against your rental income. And then renewals is things like replastering, repainting, and redecorating. Again, those can be offset fully against your taxable income. Now, typically when I get asked that question, it's I do get accountants say, well, according to BIM manuals, you're not allowed. But actually, in the same BIM manual of HMRC literature, it does tell you if you've got a buy-to-let mortgage, one of the terms and conditions say it's got to be in a lettable state. And one of the terms of a buy-to-let mortgage is that it's in a lettable state. So to play that one off against each other, if you've got a property that's in a lettable state and you do with these repair, replace, renewals, then most times out of 10, you can offset the cost against your income. But if you're on the other side, whereby you have property that's uninhabitable, then typically I would say most of the costs that you'll incur will be capital in nature. So good question. Hopefully I've provided some answers about that. I've got another question, really. I'm going to bring over to yourself again, Ross. Huda has said, can we have details about what to look for in a property inspection, please? So what would you say you should be looking out for in a property, when you're looking at property to buy? What things should you kick, but not too hard?
Oh, where do you start? So it starts when you walk up to the front door, or even before that. For me, I'd be looking for puddles in driveways. I'd be looking at drains. I'd be looking at downpipes. There's so many things. For that one, I can only say, have a look at my website, ross-maynard.com. Come and talk to me. That course is for you if that's what you're interested in, because the check sheet is what we follow. I've put it together over the last 5 or 6 years of looking at properties. It's fully comprehensive and will take you through everything from drainage problems right through to visual inspections on electrical and gas installations. So yeah, have a look at the website, come and talk to me.
Perfect. Thank you ever so much for that. I'm going to go, we are nearing the end of our show already. Can you believe it? So we'll go into the next questions so I can speed this one up. I'm going to ignore 1 or 2 questions.
So the quick fire round now, is it?
I think so. I think so.
Hands on buzzers.
Here we go. So Amy's asked a question. To expand my property portfolio further, I want to sell my residential property and use the released cash to invest in a further 2 to 3 properties. My question is, will it find it harder for a lender, as my limited company will be new and I won't have any residential properties? So a quick answer, is there going to be an issue by having selling your property?
Reach out and I'll sort it out for you.
There you go. So that's Amy answered. Zoe asked a question. I own a property investment company looking to buy an electric vehicle. Here we go. I understand that there are good government incentives. Yes, there is, but not to hire. You have to own it, so PCP maybe, but you can get capital allowances on electric cars. Don't go for petrol, diesel, or hybrid cars. Why? Because you have a massive benefit in kind charge, and it just isn't worth it when you do the calculations. Always charge a company the mileage rate of 45 pence per mile for the first 10,000 miles and 25p per mile thereafter. And trust me on this, I've done this for about 10, 12 years. I'm constantly looking at, shall I buy a car in a company? Every single year, I come back with the same answer. No. Why do I keep putting myself through it? I don't know. Monday,
unless it's electric.
Unless
it's all electric. You can get 100%, can't you, in the first year?
You can, yeah. And the benefit in kind charge is going to be very, very small as well. There is going to be a benefit. There is going to be a benefit in kind charge.
Definitely.
Not yet.
Yeah.
So just going to go to the live panel just to see if there's anything on there, because I'm just curious of what people have been typing in. Tony Fung, so good evening to you, sir. So I'm looking to buy a property with high quality summer house with heating and light and everything. That's interesting words. What is the rule around this as a HMO room or even a standalone studio? Oh, right. Okay. So we're talking about a summer house. Has anyone in the panel member list ever rented out a summer house before?
Oof. I built one, and if it's got water flowing to it, if it's got drainage to it, you need full planning permission. So you cannot tenant it, you cannot do anything with it unless you've got full planning permission. Most summer houses are built under permitted development.
Wow. Okay.
You can get your kids to live in it. just an idea, really.
Yeah,
I can't say that they're going to be very popular with the council. You know, it would have to be a set of fire safety and HHS housing health and safety rating system. You know, like for the hazards for, you know, is there sufficient light coming in? What's the means of escape? What's the controllable heating? There's a whole bunch of things. And in the Housing Act as well, is it defined as a dwelling?
I think you'll find it will be, and most summer houses are built of timber, which isn't ideal for long-term residents.
Ross, just so because you will be stalked on this show, trust me.
Yeah, good.
But if you could type in your email address, that would be fantastic. Yep. Because a couple of people have been asking. So welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Just quickly type in your email, just to save me a job trying to find my emails again. So just people say thank you already. We're not finished yet, but it's good that, by the way, if you haven't done so already, make sure that you subscribe to the channel or the platform that you're on. Give this a like, give it a comment, share the link of the video and the link of LinkedIn or can't be Facebook, can it? But on other platforms, make sure you share it with your friends and all the people you know, so that people can then join in the love. Not that kind of show. So Obidum has asked a question. We are buying, beginning to buy in a limited company structure. We can expect the company paying back personal funds loaned to the company for purchase when the company is well established. So just for anyone listening out for that, typically when you start a limited company up to buy investment properties, you might buy a property for £200,000. You might get a 75% loan to value. So kind of 100, let's do maths a bit easier for me. £100,000 property, £75,000 mortgage, the £25,000 that's left, that would be a loan from you to the limited company. That can be taken out by you anytime when it's got the money. So if the property is refinanced or it's generating profits, you could take that £25,000 out. Did you know, however, that you could actually charge your limited company interest, which you then get a tax-free interest amount, because depending on if you're a basic rate taxpayer, you can earn up to £1,000 worth of interest tax-free each year. If you're a high rate taxpayer, you can still earn £500 worth of interest tax-free. So that is money that you can charge to the company, and the company gets a tax deduction on that interest. So just be aware of that as we go through. I think it's quite fitting. It's the last kind of thing before I kind of go into my final slide for Bronwen, because it is now 8:30 or thereabouts. So I'm just going to get my slide, but there was one question, Bronwen, that came out before we go to your slide, and it was, what is the outlook for 2022, 2023? And that's crystal ball time, I think, in looking at 2023. But what's your kind of thoughts on property investing going forwards?
Well, you know, you've got to look at the economics, haven't you, and say, well, we're an island in the UK. So I'm talking about UK investing now, not Zanzibar, where I am, but UK investing. We're not building enough houses. There was a report recently, I will share that on social media, that said we're, you know, way behind our new build housing this year. And we need to build huge amounts every year to keep up with the demand. So if we're not building enough houses, our population's going up, then people need to rent. So in terms of investing, there's definitely opportunity. What you need to do is get the best education you can so that you can consider what is the best strategy for you in your area, what type of tenants you like, that you think you'd like to help. I mean, I've got tenants from sort of young professionals through to street homeless, actually. That's for another time. So you can see, and I've got sort of everything in between in a way, but I know where the demand is and I'm adapting to that demand in certain areas. So yeah, I think that's, I could talk for hours about this. Yeah, I just wanted to plug my book. We don't do sales on this, but honestly, I get people say to me, why don't you talk about your courses? So what I've got here for you is a link. I think Simon can put it into the chat boxes, but there's a link. It's new training that I've just published that is brilliant for newbies, people who are just starting out, that are probably a bit scared. You know, there's so many strategies out there and all these acronyms we talked about today, SAS, SA, HMO, you know, all of that. If you don't know where to start, then this is the free webinar for you, just to give you the confidence and to consider a good way of learning. And my book is on Amazon, Audible, Building Your Dream Life. If anybody would like a free copy, please contact me with a reason as to why you think it's going to be useful. It has 15 case studies. It has all the problems I faced. It has how I've overcome those. So yeah, good place to start for people who are either completely new or perhaps have been investing for a long time and need to bring themselves up to speed with the various strategies and different choices. So yeah, I'd love to help you learn. So contact me and watch that webinar and give me feedback. That would be fantastic.
Thank you ever so much for that. And it does bring us now to the close of tonight's event. So thank you ever so much for your attendance. However, there is something I want you to do next, and that is to get your calendars out, because the next show is on actually, funny enough, the Knee Punch first of the month. So that is the 1st of November at 7 o'clock. We'll be taking your questions, but below this video description, there will be contact details for all the panel members and their websites, so that you can have a look at their sites, get in contact with them as soon as you can possible. If you're looking for a mortgage, go for Simon Hodgson, legals, Tim.Bishop, NRLA membership, make sure you get onto that with Teresa. Bronwen to help you with education, mentoring. Everyone needs a push now and again. Paul.Hilliard for the great deals of LNPG, and obviously Ross, our new panel member, to help you in regards to building inspections and some of the inventories that you talked about earlier. So thank you ever so much, guys, for joining in with us. And we'll see you next month. So make sure that you get this date, 1st of November, in your diaries. We'll see you again all very soon. Thank you.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye.